Mrs. Nevinson took up a lantern and said that she would keep it overside as a precaution against the demon mist's reappearance, and I told her that that was an excellent idea. I would have asked Jessie to do the same, but she was in too nervous a state. She had just been sick over the gunwale, and sat now with her hands pressed to her temples. We resumed the old course. The jungle foamed out at us monotonously, glimmering dully in the moonlight. But even after we had rounded another bend, there was still no sign of an opening that might indicate a track. Then Mrs. Nevinson exclaimed and pointed. "What is it?" asked her husband. "That clump of manicold palms. I seem to remember it. I'm sure I've seen it in all my dreams. It was always just near the track opening." Something significant had happened. In the story of My Bones and My Flute. After Mrs. Nevinson's exclamation, it was Rayburn who spoke next. He shouted, "Quick, boss! Quick! We reached the track! The flute music turning into the bush here!" In that frantic and dramatic manner we came to the track opening. The jungle parted abruptly, and across the black gap with uncertain flakes of moonlight shot through it like petrified fireflies, the boat was about to drift past. Only swift and adept boatmanship on the part of Rayburn brought the bow round. In the excitement of the moment, I caught at the limb of a tree in an attempt to pull the boat into the alcove, but only succeeded in swinging the bow outward again. Rayburn called sharply at me to desist, and dug his oar down into the shallow water near the bank. That saved the situation, and the next instant, the bow of the boat grounded softly against the bank. Had we not planned the details of our landing, there might have been hopeless confusion. Rayburn attended to the mooring of the craft while Mr. Nevinson and I sprang ashore. Mrs. Nevinson handed across the spades and cutlasses to the two of us. Jessie, who should have attended to the lanterns, failed us, and it was her mother who had to snatch them up and hand them across. Meanwhile, the flute was advancing up the track, unheedful of our delay in disembarking. Rayburn began to explain that this was a fairly well-used track. Indians and labber hunters frequented it, he said. Like a madman, I snapped at him. "Keep your information for later. Get up those spades and cutlasses. Look, mind my torch there. My goodness, the flute's going. We can't let it get too far ahead. Quick, hurry!" I was trembling and snatched blindly at the two spades when I should have taken up only one. Mr. Nevinson, almost as agitated, swore at me, and we began to wrestle over the possession of a lantern. At length we managed to sort ourselves out. Remembering Mr. Nevinson's detailed instructions on the veranda, we took up our positions as planned, Rayburn and I in the front, the two women behind us, and Mr. Nevinson bringing up the rear. We set out in the gloom ahead. The ground was soft and spongy, with an accumulation of decades, perhaps centuries, of fallen leaves and rotted twigs, and the air around us smelt damp and mossy. The moonlight penetrated in tiny patches here and there, ghostly coins and ragged petals. On either side of us we could feel rather than see the looming trunks of paraipi and awara palms, hoary and vicious with a multitude of long, sharp spines. The light from our lanterns, if anything, emphasized the mystery and gloom around us. The sound of the flute, which had gone so far ahead as barely to be audible, began to come towards us again in that uncanny manner noted when we got into the boat at Hood de Vries. Within a few seconds it had approached within what seemed no more than a few feet in advance of us, and this distance it kept. Jessie whimpered nervously, and I stretched back and gripped her arm. Every instant I feared she would collapse in our hands, but somehow she kept up. Her mother, on the other hand, was as alert and determined and forceful as any of us men. I found my admiration for her bounding up tremendously. Her irritability had vanished, and her eyes glittered with a pugnacious light, wild and decidedly crazy, yet very feminine and fascinating. More than once I heard her grunting and expressing familiarity with what she saw about her. And Jessie, too, once or twice would mumble, "I know that tree. It's the same one I saw in my dreams," or something to that effect. We must have proceeded about a quarter of a mile when I noticed that the darkness had begun to take on a strange, burnt umber tint. I was on the point of commenting on this, imagining it to be a new development of the menace that hung over us, when it occurred to me that there was nothing mysterious about the phenomenon. Dawn had broken. Within a few minutes it would be daylight above the treetops and twilight down here. The very thought of day, even though we would not be able to benefit from the full radiance of the sun because of the denseness of the jungle, was enough to send a quake of hope through me. "It's getting brighter," I announced with a kind of flighty fervor. "Dawn is here." And I was on the point of going on to announce that half our worries were over, when our guide, the flute, began to behave in that alarmed fashion of a short while before, when the mock takuba threatened us. Ahead of us, we heard a loud rustling as of twigs being disturbed, and Rayburn came to a halt and cautioned, "That sound like Bushmaster, sir. Stop!" We stood still, listening. Jessie pressed herself against my back, and I could feel her trembling. The rustlings continued, and there seemed to be no doubt that it must be some kind of snake. It might be a harmless commodity, a kind of boa, but on the other hand, it could be a bushmaster, the most dreaded of all creatures in the Guyana jungle. Its venomous bite causes death within 10 to 15 minutes. We had not been able to bring a rifle, but our cutlasses were sharp, and our heavy boots had been worn on purpose as a precaution against snakes. The flute, still warning in tone, was gradually increasing its distance between us and itself, and recalling the river incident, I had an idea. I said, "I don't believe it's a bushmaster. It's another ruse to delay us, like that takuba. Let's go on. Don't let it fool us." From the rear, Mr. Nevinson called, "Don't be precipitate, Milton. Careful." Unheeding, I rushed forward, waving my lantern aloft. The air, more oppressive now, seemed to hum and oscillate. A harsh, savage lashing broke out near a clump of wild pines on the right of the track. I had a glimpse of the cotton-like webs of bush spiders that are always to be found when woven between the razor-sharp leaves of wild pines. The noises ceased abruptly. I came to a halt, knowing the old bush tale that whenever a bushmaster is about to strike, it grows quiet and unmoving. I kept playing the beam of my torch along the tracks, standing there rigid, not knowing what nature of horror to expect, physical or psychic. I had not long to wait. From among the wild pines, I saw a thin grayish-brown mist wreathing. The air vibrated. Rayburn by now had joined me, and I could hear the footsteps of the others clumping in our rear. The flute was coming back towards us, but it still contained that trilling note of alarm. The darkness had definitely lightened. The coins and petals of moonlight on the ground were growing pale. The misty abhorrence still hovered ahead of us, even though Rayburn and I waved our lanterns without cessation. Then I saw that it was beginning to take shape. Mrs. Nevinson cried, "Oh, heavens! Look! Look at that! I saw it like that in my dream!" The squat travesty of a head was materializing. Two lapis lazuli orbs glared in rank malevolence at us. I heard Jessie whimper behind me. I muttered something to Rayburn, and he gave me a quick glance, grunted, and fumbled in his haversack. Then he hissed, "Ready, sir!" And he flung forward onto the ground what appeared in the beam of my torch to be a ragged, grey, spider-like object. Jessie gasped and asked what it was. But knowing it to be only a piece of waste soaked in petrol, I did not answer, but took 2 quick steps forward, struck a match, and pushed it towards the waste. The waste flared up, and the very earth seemed to leap at us in a cloud of mist and stench that sent us staggering backwards. All about us there broke out a cacophonous chatter of voices, vacuous, hacking yelps and aerial whimperings and snarls. There was a sort of sizzling, crackling sound too, a long sustained flute note, despairful, cut through the hubbub like a scarlet spear. Then there was silence. Space seemed to tilt and right itself. Her lanterns were out like the waste. The twilight had a gunmetal tint, a merging of umber and ultramarine, and the flute had stopped. I heard Jessie moaning, and I heard Rayburn too. It could only have happened in the story of My Bones and My Flute.